Hello and welcome back to our second demo video. In this video, we're going to cover problem 11-3b. This coincides with your homework problem 11-3a. Okay, so what we have here is Otto's Drugstore. They got 4 employees. They're paid on an hourly basis plus time and a half for any hours that exceed 40 hours a week. Okay. So just by looking at this, we can see that we have 3 employees that actually work overtime, right? We have D. Patel, L. Grimmett, and A. Bly. Okay, so they work overtime. So we'll need to calculate that. They give us the federal income tax withholding. They give us the United Fund contribution amount for each employee. The federal income tax withholding was actually calculated based on information that the employee submitted. So when you get a job, you're going to have to, first day on the job, you're going to fill out a W-4. W-4 says, okay, how many people are you claiming? Are you going to claim yourself? Are you going to claim 0? Are you going to claim 1? Do you have any children? Would you like to claim them? Basically what this does is it tells the government, or it tells your employer actually, how much they should be withholding on your behalf for federal income tax. Okay, basically we don't know how much we're going to owe in taxes at the end of the year because we don't know how much we're going to make, right? But we can project, and that's basically what we're doing. There's payroll tables out there that says if you get paid every 2 weeks or every week, and you have so many exemptions, or you claim so many people, then here's how much should be withheld from each pay that you receive. Okay, so we're going to take it for what it's worth. This United Fund contribution, same thing. The employee went to their employer and said, hey, I want you to take X amount of money out of my pay and I want you to give it to the United Fund. Not a problem. We got some more information here. They give us the FICA rate, which is 7.65%. They give us the state income tax, which is 3%. State unemployment tax, that's the SUTA that we talked about in class, that's 5.4%. That is a employer tax. Then we have the federal unemployment, which is 0.8%. That is, again, the employer's tax, not the employee. The employer pays federal unemployment. And if you remember back in class on Tuesday, I brought up the term FUTA, right? F-U-T-A. That's what that 0.8% is, okay? Don't worry about wage expense, office wage expense. We're just going to lump it all into one as salaries and wages expense, okay? Depending on the employer preference, you could, if you wanted to, have a number of wage expense accounts, maybe one for the store wages, maybe one for the office wages. You can do that, that's fine. It's basically dictated by how much information do we want and how do we want to segregate that information. For as long as I've been doing payroll for clients, it's all been listed as one. They didn't break out their employees and say, oh, this one works in the office, so they're administrative. These people over here, they work on the site, so they're going to be, a different. We're going to have a different expense for them. It might be, maintenance or not maintenance. Contractor expense, contractor wage expense, or whatever. The point is, we're not going to do that here. When you get in the real world, we're not going to segregate out payroll calculations based on the job function, okay? So first thing we got to do is prepare payroll registry for the weekly payroll. Then we need to do our journal entries for the employee. Then we need to do our expenses as the employer. And then we need to show that we actually send in the money to the Federal Reserve, meaning we're sending in FICA and we're sending in the federal income tax that we withhold from our employees. Okay, so I have already quasi started the spreadsheet just to save some time. So if you'll notice, all I did was I took the chart that they gave me and I added some columns, right? I took the hours that they gave me, I took the hourly rate that they gave me. I automatically calculated the regular, okay? How did I calculate the regular? All I did was take the hours worked times the hourly rate. So if we look at Dingler, she worked 39 hours. She gets $12 per hour, 40 hours and under, okay? So if you look at Patel, I had to break Patel down, right? I have regular and I have overtime. So Patel's regular hours were 40 times the $12. That's how I got the 480, okay? Then you see this $36. Well, that's based on the overtime, right? We know he worked 2 hours overtime. How do I know that? Well, he worked a total of 42. He gets paid regular wages for 40 hours. Anything over that's overtime, right? So I took the 2 hours that he worked, and I multiplied it by 18. You might be saying, where in the world did you get 18? Well, Patel's hourly rate is $12, right? Anything that Patel works over 40 hours, Patel gets time and a half. So that means he's going to get 12 plus half of 12, which is 6, right? Same thing with Grimmett, right? Grimmett worked overtime. How do I know that? Well, because her hours are 44, not 40. So I multiplied, to get the regular wages, I multiplied 40 hours times the hourly rate. And then to get the overtime, I took the hours that Grimmett worked overtime, which was 4, and I multiplied it by 15. Where'd you get the 15 from? Well, remember, it's time and a half. So for anything over 40, she's going to get her base pay of $10 per hour plus halftime, which would be $5. So the total is 15. Same thing with Bly. Did the same exact thing. 40 hours times $10. She got a regular pay of $400. Overtime, I took the 6 hours of overtime and I multiplied it by 15. Why did you do 15? Again, her hourly rate is $10. Half of that is 5. So the total hourly rate that she makes for overtime is 15 bucks. Okay? So then went ahead and did the gross pay. I entered, I entered this one. Oh, yep, that's good. I entered this one and this one. Make those yellow. Okay? I also created a gross pay column. How do I do that? Well, very easy. The gross pay is going to be regular pay plus any overtime wages that the employee earned. So I just added those up. Notice what I did down here is I totaled my total gross pay. Okay? Now, I'm going to jump around just a little bit. We have gross pay. You got to calculate FICA. We got to include the federal income tax. We got to calculate the state tax. We got to include the United Fund contribution that the employee elected. And then I'm going to add up my total expenses, right? So when you see total, that's nothing more than FICA, federal income, state income, and United Fund, okay? To get the net pay, what I had to do was take my gross, subtract out the total of my withholdings, and that gives me my net pay, okay? Then we end up with salaries and wages expense. Well, the salaries and wages expense has to be equal to the gross pay because we are paying our employee, like for Dingler, we are paying her $468. Okay? The fact that the government takes FICA, federal income tax, state income tax, and any voluntary withholdings has nothing to do with us. They're getting 460, or she's getting 468. Patel is getting $516. Okay? So, I click and drag that down, and notice my salaries and wages expense is $1,934, okay, which is my wages, the amount of the journal entry for wages and salaries expense, okay? So now what I'm going to do is, bear with me here, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the FICA. Super easy to do, okay? If you notice in cell G1, I plugged in the FICA amount, which is 0.0765. All I need to do is multiply the gross by that FICA amount, okay? And I'm going to do that all the way down. So I have my total FICA for all my employees to be $147.95. What that means is, out of their pay, their gross pay, I need to withhold $147.95 and send that to Federal Reserve Bank, okay? The federal income tax, that was taken from the problem, okay? So I created these two in addition. This was given. State income tax, I created this one as well, okay? Now, how do I calculate the state income tax? The same way that I calculate FICA, meaning I take my gross pay and then I multiply it by the state rate. In our problem, it's 3%. If you'll notice in I1, I put in our 3%, I clicked enter, and I see that the state income tax is $14.04. Now, let me show you an easy thing to do, right? Whenever you do any mathematical functions in Excel, you're speaking Excel language. It's not that hard. Basically, what we're telling Excel to do is, if I'm in cell reference I3, I want you to come over to the left 2 columns. 1, 2, 3. Excuse me, 3, right? I want you to take that value, whatever's in 3 cells to the left of my starting point, which is I1. Then I want you to multiply with me here. Yeah, okay. So then what I want you to do, after you go over three columns, I want you to go back to our starting point, which is I3. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go, or we're telling Excel, I want you to go up 2. And whatever's in that cell reference, I want you to multiply that number with F3, okay? Now, if I click and drag down, watch what happens. I get a bunch of goofy stuff. Why? Because what happens is, I'm telling Excel right now, since we're in I4, I want you to go over 3. So take this amount and multiply it by whatever's 2 cells above my starting point. Well, it's state income tax, okay? So let me delete these out. I'll show you an easier way to do it, okay? So right now, I told Excel I'm in J3. I want you to go over three rows. 1, 2, 3, okay? Which is my gross pay amount. Then I want you to multiply that by whatever's in cell reference I1, which is 2 cells above my starting point, okay? If I go into my formula and I type in a $ before the I and a $ after the I am locking in that cell reference. See how it's red? That means that it's always going to go to this cell. So as I click and drag down, what I'm telling Excel to do is, from this spot, I4, I want you to go over 3. 1, 2, 3. I want you to take that dollar amount, okay? And then, since I locked in the column and the row, I want you to go to exactly I1 and multiply that number. Okay? So a little Excel education for you. All right. So now what I need to do is I need to multiply out I need to calculate out what are the total withholdings. Well, the total withholdings, I'm going to click my sum button and I'm going to select, G3, which is my FICA. I'm going to include my federal income tax. I'm going to include state income tax, and I'm going to include United Fund contribution. Enter. All it did was add up all of my total withholdings. Okay? I can do the same thing. I can just click and drag. And basically what I'm telling Excel is whatever cell reference I'm in, right? Whether it's K1, let's look at K1, right? Because we set this up. K1, I want you to come over 1, 2, 3, 4 spots, and I want you to sum the 4 cells that are to the left of my K3, right? Look what I did. Look what happened in K4. It did the same thing. It summed all the data that's in G4 to J4. Okay, did the same thing. All right. Now I got to figure out the net pay. So to figure out net pay, super easy. Take my gross, subtract out my total deductions. And I'm just going to click and drag down. Okay. So now I have my totals, right? I auto sum the entire each column because now I know exactly what my payables are, right? So I already plugged in salaries and wages expense debit. That's the gross amount, right? Then I need to add up all my payables. Well, my FICA payable is $141. My federal income tax payable is $58.02. My state income tax, well, that's easy. That's the state income tax column total. Same thing with United Fund. United Fund total is only 20 bucks. What is my salaries and wages payable? Well, that has to be equal to my net pay, right? Because why? $1,567 is going to be written out as checks and they're going to be given to the employees. Okay, so now I just want to check, make sure debits and credits equal, which they do not because let's see. Oh, that's the problem. Picked the wrong number. FICA, my federal income tax. There we go. Okay, so now if I add all these up, I get $1,934, which is equal to the salaries and wages expense. Okay, so that is journal entry B. So now we got to do C. Journalize the payment of the payroll on February 16th. Super easy to do. Skip a space between all your journal entries, please. And February 16th, it's payday, right? The employees are coming in. They're asking, where's my check? Where's my paycheck? Oh, we already wrote them out. Here you go. Here's the journal entry. I need to first show that my payable is going down, so I need to debit salaries and wages payable. For the amount of the payable. Well, what's the amount of the payable? Well, it's $1,567.03. What am I crediting? Well, I'm paying my employees. My cash is going down. So I'm going to credit cash for the same amount. Okay? Now we get to C. C says, journal the payment of the, actually, no, that was C. We're on D now. Journalize the remittance to the Federal Reserve Bank on February 28th, 2017 of the FICA and federal taxes payable to the government. Okay? So we did A, we did B, we did C. Now we got to do D. Okay? So the first thing that we need to recognize is that we got the employee portion of the taxes. We need to do the employer portion of the taxes. Okay? So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to recognize that we have payroll tax expense, right? We have to pay taxes on our payroll as the employer. So payroll tax expense. Okay, how much is it? Well, let's think about that for a moment. Before I figure that out, I can calculate all the taxes that I owe, right? So let's think about it. The employer has to pay FICA taxes. They pay 7.65% on all their employees' wages, right? The government withheld 7.65% from the employee. As the employer, we have a payroll tax of FICA that we have to pay too. So I'm going to say FICA payable, and that amount needs to be equal to the FICA income tax that we've already calculated, right? So my FICA payable is $147.95. The next thing I need to book is my federal unemployment tax, and I'm going to abbreviate that as FUTA. Okay, remember it's a credit, so I need to indent FUTA payable. Okay, what's my FUTA? Well, that's easy. When I go to the problem, they tell me that the federal unemployment is 0.8% of the gross wages. So I already know what my gross wages are. They're in my payroll registry. I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to multiply it by 0.008. So the FUTA payable, or the federal unemployment tax that the employer pays, is $15.47. I need to do SUTA as well, the state unemployment tax. I'm going to abbreviate and say SUTA payable. Well, that's easy. I pay it on the gross wages. The problem tells me that it is 5.4%, so 0.054. I get $104.44. So what is my total payroll expense for the employer? Well, I just have to add all these up. If I add all those up, it equals $267.86. So, you know what, just to make it easier, I'm just going to auto sum these. Boom. Okay. We'll book the date for these. We're going to make it February 15th also. Okay. Now what we need to do is journal the remittance to the Federal Reserve Bank, okay, for FICA and federal income tax payable. All right. So we're only paying the federal portion. Super easy to do. Okay. We do this on February 28th. And the first thing we need to do is recognize that our FICA payable is decreasing. How do I know the amount? Well, I already booked it for the employee, and I already booked it for the employer, excuse me. So if I take 147.95 plus 147.95, that's my calculation, okay? So I just added those up, right? $295.90. I also need to pay the federal income tax payable. Well, what did I book it for? Well, that's easy. I know I'm withholding $141 in total from all my employees for this one paycheck. So I'm just going to plug that in, right? The federal income tax is $141. So I'm paying this. I need to credit cash. All I need to do is just add up these two amounts. I end up with $436.90. Okay? And that, my friends, is how you do, excuse me, problem 11-3B, which is going to be extremely similar to your problem 11-3A. Okay? The key takeaways here: first, you got to create this payroll registry, right? You got to figure out what their gross pay is. Once you get the gross pay, you can calculate FICA for each employee. You can calculate the state income tax for each employee, okay? Then you got to figure out net pay. That's easy. To figure out net pay, you take all your withholdings, FICA, federal income tax, state income tax, and United Fund contribution, and you add them up. That's your total, okay? To get the net pay, and the net pay equals the salaries and wages payable. To get that number, you take your gross pay, you subtract out your total withholdings, okay? Yeah, so that's problem 11-3B. We have one more problem to do, which is problem 11-4B. And 11-4B is also another payroll example. So please tune back in for that problem.